Okay, so this is the demo for the hinge slash coil piece that you're going to be doing. And I'm going to give you a couple of different options for starting it. I'll first start with a pinch base, and I'll show you how to do a slab base. Okay, so I'm going to start out with about a pound of clay for the pinch base. Anytime you get clay out to use, make sure you just close your bag back up so it doesn't dry out. It stays nice and wet for the next time you want to use it. So I'm just going to pound with the palm of my hand onto that clay and make it into as close to a sphere as I can. Just trying to do it nice and even. Okay, so I've got a nice spherical shape here. And so to start the pinch pot, I'm going to stick my thumb straight into the clay, and I have to kind of imagine with my mind's eye that I'm about a 1/4 inch away from the base of the sphere. And then I'm going to just start pinching out, pressing my thumb against my 2 fingers out here, and I'm just going all the way around, thinning out the clay to about a 1/4 inch, and it's just something you just kind of have to guess at. And then once I get around all the way, I'm going to just move up a little bit and just pinch evenly all the way around. I'm just going to keep repeating that. And since this is going to be the base of your piece, you're probably going to want more of a wide bowl than a tall, narrow one. So I'm going to be pinching out a little bit more rather than up. So once I make my way all the way around, I just move up a little bit more towards this top edge. This would maybe be for one that would start out more narrow at the base and then get wider as you go up, and then maybe narrow back in, or maybe it just gets wider. Just trying to keep it as even as I can. And you don't want to pinch this top edge too thin because you're going to be adding coils onto that. So I'm trying to keep it about 1/4 of an inch or the width of my pinky finger. Just kind of filling as I go, like for any thicker areas that I need to pinch thinner. Okay, so I've got this as my base. And bowls, like, they can be a little wobbly, so once you get your bowl pinched, you'll want to tap it just a little bit, not too much, because that'll make it just really sink down when the clay is really wet, but just tap it a bit. And you can press like that, just so that you have a flat base for it to sit on so it doesn't tip. Another thing I would recommend for this project, because we are working with really wet clay, is to get a piece of paper towel and put that in between the board and your clay. That way, if you want to pick your piece up and move it around, it's not going to be stuck to the board. So remember to do that. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to add on some coils now. So just grab out like a hunk of clay, and you'll just start rolling it in your hands like this, like Play-Doh. Okay, and once I get it to a certain point, maybe like an inch thick, I'll move to the either on the canvas table or on the wedging table and just start rolling it out with my fingers. If it feels like it starts to get kind of oval shaped, just tip it up on that, on the, like the tip end, and just kind of work it down a little bit into more of a rounded shape. That's something that typically happens when you're first starting to make coils. And just roll it out to about 1/4 of an inch thick, or maybe 3/8. Okay, so that's going to be more than I need for this coil. Okay, so all you're going to need, since the clay is really wet, is to add a little bit of water around the edge of your clay. And if your edge ended up being kind of uneven and you don't like that, you can take a needle tool and kind of trim it off, even if you want to, just depending on what you want. Mine, I'm fine with how it looks, so I'm just going to start working on this, on building up the coils. Okay, so I'm just going to lay this on here how I want it, and then you can take your needle tool and cut down at an angle like that. Pull off the extra clay above and below. Get a little bit of water in between those edges. Join those edges together. You're going to want to compress the clay, kind of squish it and wiggle it so it feels like it's sticking. And join that coil together. And then you're also going to want to squish and wiggle your clay down to the clay beneath. And because your clay is wet, you may need to just stop and wait for it to firm up a little bit before you add on too many coils. If you try and add too many on when it's really wet, it's going to start to droop and sag, and it's going to be really frustrating. So you're going to have to learn patience with the clay. Like, God has to learn patience with us while we're like growing and developing, and we have to learn patience with the clay until it gets to the state where we can work with it. So just wiggle that and compress it on. I can feel like when I push kind of hard, it just wants to collapse. So I'm not doing a ton of pressing down right now. So at this point, if you want to just build with coils, you could just continue with that. If you want the outside to be smooth and you're not going to add on your decorative coils yet, you could blend it. The way that you blend, the way I like to blend is either with my finger or with the wooden rib. Another way to blend that's really fast and nice too is with this metal rib I found. So I'm going to go ahead and use the metal rib. And I'm just pulling the clay from below and blending it up with the clay above. And if you need to, you switch directions, you can pull from the top down too. Okay, and then you can just build as long as you want to. You could start your decorative coils at this point, or you could wait until it gets taller, whatever you want to do. I'm not going to keep this, so I'm just going to demonstrate how to add on a decorative coil now. I'll just use this leftover clay here. So for just depending on what you want to do, you could go a little thinner. I'm going to go just a little thinner and do just a rolled up coil. Just add a little water on here to make sure it won't stick. Just roll that out. Okay, so that should be enough for that coil. So with the decorative coils, you are going to need to probably score it a little bit, and that means taking the needle tool and roughing up the edge that's going to touch the coil below. So I've gone one direction, I'm going to go another direction. You just want to make sure that any of that flat original surface is kind of roughed up and not there anymore. And then do the same thing where you're going to add the coil onto your piece. You know, and this could be anything. Like this could be a swirl like this, or it could be a square kind of coil thing. It could be anything. It doesn't. You don't have to do what I'm doing. Just add a little bit of water on there, and then you want to compress it down, kind of squish it in there, and make sure it's going to stay like that. And so, you know, I could add these all the way around, or I could just do 3 of them, and then I could do like coils just going over that. You know, just be creative in how you want to do that. So that is how you would do this coil pot, starting with a pinched base. If you want to start with a slab, you won't need as much clay for the slab because it's just going to be the very base. It's not going to go up the side. So I'm going to get a little bit less clay for that. Just depending on what your design is. Okay, so you can start by kind of squishing the slab out with your palms like that. Then you can move to the rolling pin. Don't hit it too hard, but this will kind of flatten it and stretch it out. Go a couple of directions. See how that's kind of stretched it out a bit. And then you can just roll it. And roll it till it's about a 1/4 inch thick. Okay, so that will be good, a good start for my base. If you want it to be kind of an organic shape, you can leave it. You can, if you want it to be, you know, really circular, you could find there's lots of circular things in here that you can just set on there. You could do a square, you could do a triangle, whatever you want to do. I'll just, for the sake of time, I'll just use the base of this and just draw that circle on there. And then you can just cut it with your needle tool. And just remember to cut on the wear board so you don't cut through the canvas on the table. Okay, so that's a good start. I'll just do 1 coil on this. Actually, I probably don't need to. It's just the exact same technique as before. So as long as you have wet clay, you just need to add in a little bit of water and then just compress that coil right on there. For your very first coil, just to make sure you have a secure attachment to the base, I would go ahead and blend that on the inside. So this tool is great for that. Just this wooden rib. I'm grabbing a little bit of clay from the coil and pressing it down into the slab. And that will make sure that it doesn't come off. I don't want your coil pots to come apart. Okay, and then you can choose whether or not you want to blend, blend that outside coil in with the base. But I would recommend these metal ribs for that. And we've got some here. If you don't have your toolkit yet, you can borrow a rib for that. And that's just the second method for starting your coil piece. So any questions?
So you can only work with this when the clay is wet, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what do you do if you get halfway done with it one week?
Okay, great question. Yeah, thanks for reminding me. So if you only get a few inches on your piece tonight, I would recommend getting some wet paper towels. I'll just demonstrate it. Okay, get some wet paper towels and just drape over that top edge, like wrap it around like that so it stays wet. And then I'll get you some garbage sacks that you can wrap your piece in, and that should keep it wet. The wooden boards do absorb some of the moisture out of the clay, so if you want it to stay really wet, I recommend putting your piece inside the bag on your board, just so that it's got plastic all around it, and then tuck the plastic in underneath the board so no air can get in. If you want it to dry a little, if it feels really floppy, you can leave it on the board and just put the plastic over and tuck it in underneath the board. So great question. Any other questions? Okay, well, if your clay fills for your maker's marks, if it feels kind of like cheddar cheese, maybe medium sharp cheddar cheese, you're